See, bruh. See, y'all done played so many games. Adam Silver has completely dubbed y'all. Once again, Adam Silver is showing he don't give a damn about what's going on with these ladies in this CBA negotiations. Y'all were the ones. It was y'all who was calling for Adam Silver.
The debate over housing benefits offers a revealing window into how priorities differ between the two sides. Under the latest proposal, players earning minimum salaries with no years of service would receive one-bedroom apartments for a limited span from 2026 through 2028. After that period, only certain developmental players would be eligible for studio units. From the owner's standpoint, agreeing to provide housing at all represents a compromise, since some had reportedly questioned whether the league should continue covering those costs. Their argument has been that athletes in other leagues often arrange their own accommodations. Yet when union representatives discuss negotiations publicly, housing rarely takes center stage. Instead, their comments almost always return to the revenue split. That contrast suggests the issue is less about living arrangements and more about economic philosophy. Benefits like apartments can ease financial pressure in the short term, but revenue percentages determine long-term earning potential. For players focused on the latter, improvements in the former may feel secondary. This difference highlights a classic negotiation challenge. One side emphasizes incremental benefits while the other concentrates on structural change. Neither approach is inherently unreasonable. Owners may believe step-by-step improvements are more sustainable, while players may see structural reform as the only way to ensure lasting fairness. The tension arises when each side measures progress by different standards. Commentary from reporters who follow the league closely has noted that decision-makers appear to believe the players' expectations may be overly ambitious given current financial realities. Whether that assessment is accurate or not, such perceptions can influence how firmly negotiators hold their positions. If one side believes the other is asking for more than the system can realistically provide, compromise becomes harder to achieve. Ultimately, the housing debate isn't really about apartments at all. It's about what each side considers the true heart of the agreement. For the league, it may be sustainability and cost control. For the players, it's revenue participation and long-term earning power. Until those definitions align, discussions about secondary benefits will likely continue to feel like side conversations rather than solutions.
Via Yahoo Sports, courtesy of Yahoo Sports, the NBA Board of Governors is likely to vote this summer on expanding the league by 2 teams. Las Vegas and Seattle are considered the favored cities. So, Adam Silver is adding 2 expansion teams to the NBA. Okay, they're expanding. Meanwhile, the WNBA might be ending. The WNBA might be coming to an end while Adam Silver.
If you zoom out and look at the broader business landscape, the contrast between the two leagues becomes even more pronounced. Right now, the NBA's Board of Governors is reportedly preparing for a vote this summer on the possibility of adding 2 new franchises. Cities frequently mentioned as strong candidates include Las Vegas and Seattle, both markets with proven fan interest and infrastructure capable of supporting major professional teams. Expansion of that scale isn't just a sporting decision, it's a financial event of enormous magnitude. Recent franchise valuations suggest that expansion fees for new teams could climb into the billions of dollars. If those projections hold, the addition of 2 franchises could generate sums approaching $8 billion flowing into league ownership groups. Numbers of that size illustrate just how lucrative the NBA's current position is. Expansion isn't merely growth, it's a signal of confidence that demand for the product is strong enough to sustain additional teams and markets. Against that backdrop, the WNBA's ongoing negotiations can appear comparatively modest, even though they are critically important for the players involved. While one league discusses billion-dollar expansion opportunities, the other is focused on revenue splits, salary structures, and cost allocations. The difference in scale naturally affects public perception. It can look as though one enterprise is surging forward while the other is paused in negotiation limbo. Some players had hoped that Silver's influence might help accelerate progress, especially since his position gives him insight into both leagues' business ecosystems. They believed his involvement could add momentum or encourage compromise. Instead, the narrative emerging in recent weeks suggests that his attention is largely directed toward NBA growth initiatives and international development plans. Whether that's a matter of strategic necessity or simple timing is hard to determine from the outside. What is clear is that players are increasingly aware of how the optics look. When leaders appear focused on expansion announcements while negotiations remain unresolved elsewhere, it can reinforce a sense that one set of priorities is overshadowing another. In negotiations, morale and perception are intertwined, and the feeling of being sidelined, even if unintentional, can shape how firmly each side holds its ground.
With these ladies, he wants nothing. He does not want to sit down and talk to no Brianna Stewart. He does not want to sit down and talk to Nneka Ogwumike. or Nafisa Collier, okay, he probably would sit down and talk to Caitlin Clark. But the rest of y'all, he's not taking the time out of his day to sit down and meet with y'all after he's seen how y'all have gone about this entire process, the entire situation.
That frustration you just heard didn't materialize out of thin air, and it certainly didn't appear overnight. It's the result of weeks of mounting tension, stalled conversations, and growing uncertainty among WNBA players who believe their financial future is hanging in the balance. What makes the situation even more striking is that the person many of them expected to help break the deadlock, NBA Commissioner Adam Silver, has seemingly faded into the background. Back in October, Silver publicly indicated that he would personally make sure a new collective bargaining agreement would get done. His statement sounded reassuring at the time, almost like a guarantee that the process wouldn't spiral into a prolonged standoff. Players and observers alike interpreted his words as a sign that someone with real influence and authority would step in if negotiations stalled. Fast forward to February, however, and the tone surrounding his involvement feels dramatically different. Instead of being described as a mediator or facilitator, he's now being portrayed as distant from the process. Reports and commentary suggest he hasn't been actively engaging with the players' outreach in recent weeks, which has fueled speculation that his priorities may lie elsewhere. While the WNBA faces the possibility of its first strike in league history, Silver has been making headlines for entirely different reasons, namely, discussions about expanding the NBA. That contrast is what's driving so much of the frustration. From the players' perspective, timing matters. They're in the middle of negotiations that could reshape salaries, benefits, and long-term financial stability, and they expected visible leadership from someone who had publicly pledged involvement. Seeing attention shift toward expansion announcements instead can feel like their concerns have been pushed down the priority list. Whether that perception reflects reality or simply optics is open to interpretation, but perception alone can shape morale and negotiating dynamics. In labor disputes, symbolism often carries as much weight as concrete actions. When a prominent figure signals support early on and then appears absent during critical phases, it can create a sense of abandonment even if negotiations are still ongoing behind the scenes. For players already anxious about deadlines and outcomes, that perceived silence becomes louder than any statement. It feeds the narrative that they're fighting an uphill battle not just for better terms, but for attention itself. And as the calendar inches closer to key preseason milestones, that feeling of urgency mixed with uncertainty about leadership involvement continues to intensify.
Feel like are things that could be easily negotiated. We've talked about it in previous episodes. They changed some of those things and they maybe budged like 1% on the revenue split.
Now, the WNBA owners have drawn the line in the sand and they told y'all what we can't do. We can't do that revenue share. We have to protect ourselves as well. We are not going to lose $700 million for y'all, but we have made compromises. Housing, not trading away pregnant women, all type. There's been a...
Sports journalist Rachel Demita and others who have analyzed the situation describe the current state of negotiations as tense and slow-moving rather than collaborative and fluid. One of the most talked about details is the amount of time it reportedly took for the league to respond to the players' most recent proposal. A 6-week gap between offers is significant in any negotiation environment, especially when deadlines and preseason schedules loom in the distance. Lengthy pauses can signal careful consideration, but they can also be interpreted as reluctance or strategic delay, depending on perspective. When the response finally arrived, reports indicated that movement on the central issue, revenue sharing, was minimal. That's where the main divide lies. The players' proposal centers on receiving roughly 30% of gross revenue, meaning a share calculated before operating expenses are deducted. League leadership, meanwhile, has proposed a system closer to about 70% of net revenue. On paper, 70% sounds substantially larger than 30%, but the base numbers are different. Net revenue is calculated after expenses such as staffing, marketing, arena operations, and other costs are removed, leaving a smaller pool from which percentages are drawn. Beyond revenue structure, the league has reportedly offered concessions in other areas. These include improvements in housing provisions, adjustments to travel standards, enhanced per diem allowances, and policy changes affecting player rights in specific circumstances. Those are tangible items, and in many negotiations they would represent meaningful progress. However, the sticking point remains the core financial model. What complicates matters is that, publicly at least, players have not signaled major concessions on their primary demand. Holding firm can be a negotiating strategy intended to maintain leverage, but it can also slow momentum if neither side appears willing to shift. The result is a stalemate where each party believes it has strong reasons for its position, yet neither sees sufficient incentive to move first. Situations like that often persist until external pressure, deadlines, financial implications, or public sentiment forces a breakthrough.
And shout out to Rachel Demita. Her whole point is there could be a strike coming from these players, and it could be happening this week. It could be going down. But hey, I'm interested. I'm paying attention. I got my eyes peeled, ear to the streets. That's why you got to stay over here on KTV, man. Adam Silver don't give a damn. He ain't rocking with these chicks no more. Get down in the comments and let me know what you think. This keep the vision.
And this is where the entire situation shifts from a negotiation story into a pressure cooker moment that could define the future of the WNBA for years, maybe decades, to come. Because what we're watching now isn't just a disagreement over numbers on a spreadsheet. It's a clash of philosophies, leverage, timing, and power. On one side, you have players who genuinely believe they're standing at the edge of a historic breakthrough moment. They see rising TV ratings, record attendance, viral highlights flooding social media, and a wave of new fans entering the sport because of stars who've transformed visibility. To them, this isn't the time to settle. This is the time to demand structural change that locks in long-term financial respect. They believe momentum equals leverage, and leverage is something you use, not something you save. On the other side, you have league ownership groups and executives looking at spreadsheets instead of headlines. Their perspective is colder, more cautious, and rooted in sustainability. They see a league that is growing, yes, but still financially fragile compared to major men's leagues. They see operating costs, travel expenses, arena logistics, marketing budgets, and years of losses that had to be absorbed quietly while the league built its audience. From their standpoint, agreeing to a massive revenue percentage shift right now isn't bold, it's risky. They're not negotiating for this season's headlines. They're negotiating for whether the league can still function 10 years from now without financial instability. That's why the silence from figures like Adam Silver feels so loud. His absence from the front lines of this negotiation isn't just noticeable, it's strategic. When a dealmaker steps back, it often means one of two things: either the situation isn't urgent enough yet to require intervention, or the timing favors waiting. And right now, time is a weapon. Every week that passes without a deal puts pressure on players more than owners. Training camps approach. Contracts hang in limbo. International opportunities start getting considered. The calendar doesn't just mark days, it shifts leverage. Owners know that urgency tends to favor the side that can afford to wait, and historically, leagues can wait longer than athletes can. But the players understand something too: public perception is its own kind of leverage. By keeping negotiations visible, by speaking openly, by drawing historical comparisons to past labor movements, they're trying to win the narrative battle outside the boardroom. Because if fans believe players are being undervalued, that sentiment can translate into pressure on sponsors, media partners, and eventually ownership groups. Modern labor disputes aren't fought only at tables anymore. They're fought online, in headlines, in comment sections, and in the court of public opinion. Whoever controls that narrative controls momentum. So now both sides are locked in a strategic stare-down. The league is signaling patience. The players are signaling resolve. Neither wants to blink first because the first real concession could set the tone for the entire agreement. And history shows that these moments, these tense, uncertain standoffs, are often where leagues redefine themselves. Not with a dramatic announcement, not with a sudden breakthrough, but with a slow realization that neither side can win without the other. That's the real story unfolding right now. Not just a labor dispute. Not just a contract negotiation. A test of power, timing, and belief in what this league is worth and who gets to decide that value when the stakes have never been higher.